Hello everyone and welcome back to Roll of Warplanes, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the Antonov M, or the Masha. So I did play when this plane was available because this plane is a little bit special and we will get into that here in a moment, and I'm going to do this intro pretty brief. Um, but yeah, this is the Antonov M. I had to play for quite a while in order to unlock this plane. It was not an easy grind at all. But I did come back, and so I have had this video recorded for a while. I have had, well, at least the gameplay. I've had that recorded for quite some time since I've had the plane for quite some time as well. I do have it fully equipped now. I wanted to hold off on the review until I was able to max it out the best I possibly could, and that's what I have here today. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So, the Masha is a Tier 9 Soviet fighter. And what's special about it is a premium, which means it's going to get premium status for credits and experience and all that great stuff. So it does get increased income because it is a premium plane. And we'll get into that a little bit more as the video continues. However, on a quick side note, I think I'm probably gonna try doing that Spitfire 16 marathon, which might be kind of exciting. I did miss out on the last marathon though, the one they had during the Christmas period. I was just busy playing other games and enjoying myself, and so I did not get time to play that one. But anyway, I do have this one, and I do plan on doing the Spitfire one, so that's gonna be kind of exciting. So what makes this plane particularly special? Well, let's take a quick look at what we have for guns. The gun-wise, oh, let's see, upgrades. We get four 23 millimeter guns, which are pretty standard actually for Soviet aircraft. A lot of the Soviet aircraft, they do not have the 20 mils. They get a little bit bigger guns. They get the 23s. This gets four of them. So I guess, let's see, what plane would be similar to it in terms of armament? Not the LA-160, maybe the MiG-9? Let's see. Yeah, the MiG-9 has some 23 millimeters. So let's see. If we compare it, oh, look at that. It's the exact same gun. So if you are familiar with the MiG-9, it's the exact same gun. Of course, the MiG-9 only gets two 23s. It also gets the 37. This one gets four 23s. And in my opinion, that's kind of nice because having all of the same type of gun makes it easier to aim because you're not trying to aim for different types of armaments. It's all one type of armament. And honestly, these things, they're usually not quite as reliable as 20 mils, but they are still very good. And they're not as low damage as machine guns, right? But they're not as crazy and accurate as the large caliber guns. They're that good sweet spot. 20 mils are like very reliable. 20 mils, they're extremely reliable. 23s are mostly reliable. So we don't have, yeah, they're not quite as reliable as the 20 mils, but they hit really hard. So it's got really good guns for this plane, which is great in my opinion. And yeah, the guns are great. And if we look at the maneuverability is very high. Airspeed is respectable, and altitude performance is fairly respectable. To put that into perspective, I guess we will take a look at a couple planes that compare pretty similarly to this plane. So here's the Antonov, right? And if we take a look at a couple different like dominant planes, the Attacker is a great plane at this tier. So I guess we will compare it to the Attacker. We will also compare it to a Soviet aircraft. The Soviet aircraft that I think is pretty comparable. I think the Yak-19 also gets 23s. Okay, so that might be a better comparison actually. So yeah, this actually gets the same guns as well. So the Yak-19, a lot of people are very familiar with the Yak-19. The Yak-19 gets the exact same guns as the Antonov, but the Antonov gets one extra gun. And I don't think anyone really complains about the firepower of the Yak-19. So that just goes to show you that the firepower on the Antonov is actually very, very impressive. So we'll compare it with that one, and I'll also compare it with the Key 162i, which I think is actually pretty surprisingly similar. So at first look, the gun rating on the Antonov is actually the highest. I don't know, it actually is by a pretty fair margin too. And I don't know how much of that is due to my upgrades, because I do have quite a few modifications. But out of all these planes, it does have the best firepower in my opinion, because it does get 423s. The Yak-19 gets 323s. The attacker gets 420 mils, but of course the Antonovs will hit just a little bit harder, and the Key 162 only gets 2 guns. So the firepower on this plane is actually kind of low. So the gun rating is actually pretty decent on this plane. Survivability wise, it's pretty average. It's not quite as good as the attacker, but it is better than the super fragile Yak-19s and Key 162-1s, which is pretty good. And maneuverability wise, it's very respectable. I mean, it's I don't have any modifications on the Yak-19, so technically it's probably about the same as the Yak-19 in terms of maneuverability without any modifications. So I guess the Key 162-1 is technically a little bit more maneuverable. This is a little bit more maneuverable. The attacker is not quite as maneuverable, and I really don't think people really complain about the maneuverability of the attacker. It's just not as ridiculous as the Key 162, right? Or the Yak-19, which have crazy maneuverability. Um, but with the modifications that I do have, it is very comparable to the Japanese plane. In altitude performance, it's not as high as you'll get on your German aircraft, but it is still very good. It's not as terrible as a lot of the other Soviet aircraft. For some reason, a lot of the Soviet fighters do have fairly low altitude rating. That is not the case with the Antonov M, which is pretty interesting. So it's very respectable. It's not as high as the Germans, but it's also not really low for a fighter. So if we take an overall of all this, it's got very good guns. Survivability is pretty average. Airspeed, pretty average. Not the best, not the worst. Maneuverability is definitely above average in my opinion, which you'll really never have any problems with maneuverability. And altitude performance is again pretty average. So overall you'll get a package that is pretty average. But when you have all these stats with no real downside, and honestly, all the stats feel just a little bit higher than other planes of the same tier. Not breaking or anything, but it is slightly higher. And so you'll get a more consistent aircraft that really, a good player in this plane will be able to pretty much have a response to pretty much any situation it will be in, because you'll either have more airspeed, more maneuverability, usually not altitude performance. You have good guns, so you're not spending forever taking things out. I guess one mention on the guns, if you've played any of the Soviet aircraft, you'll know that the guns they do hit pretty hard, but they don't cool down very fast. So because they're not 20s, they don't cool down quite as much. They're not derpy guns, they're not really big high caliber guns, so they're not going to like take forever to cool down or anything. But it is very noticeable having to wait for the cooldown. So you have to be very careful with how you fire your guns, because when they overheat, they don't like to cool down very quickly. All of the guns are nose mounted or front mounted, so you get two right in the dead center nose and you get two right below. And I wonder if maybe the guns that are not like in the dead center nose is maybe a little bit of the reason why sometimes this plane is a little bit janky, in the sense that you'll be aiming at your target and you're like, oh, well, come on, you're aiming, let's get something done, right? And you're aiming at your target and just none of your shots hit, and you're just like, how does that make any sense? So the accuracy of these guns does seem kind of trolly at sometimes, which is kind of weird, but I guess it is just the way it is, right? So you'll have to consider the guns. Some of my clan mates, they were getting really mad over the guns, and while theoretically the guns are very good, for some reason, at times they'll just really troll you, and I don't know why. So when I got the plane, I definitely noticed that as well. I can't really explain it because all the guns are nose mounted, but maybe just not having the guns all in the nose has something to do with it. I don't know. But at least they're not wing mounted because I hate wing mounted guns. Wing mounted guns are the absolute worst. So at least you don't have to worry about that. So overall, you get a package that is very small too. Like if you look at it, the plane is quite small for a fighter overall. It's got great maneuverability. It's got good airspeed. It just does what you want a fighter to do, which is pretty good, honestly. I do like this plane quite a bit. Let's do a quick look at the pilot skills then. So for pilot wise, I'd always want to increase accuracy, especially on this plane because the guns can be kind of janky sometimes. So I definitely recommend Marksman 1, Marksman 2 right away. After that, I want to personally increase the maneuverability of the aircraft. So I'm going to do aerobatics expert and firefighting because I had one extra point. I'm probably going to change it now. Resilience would be a great skill as well, so I wouldn't mind getting that. But yeah, overall, there's just a lot of good. There's a lot of different options you can do. It's up to you how you want to set it up. I personally wanted to increase the maneuverability of the aircraft because I thought that the maneuverability was pretty decent, and I wanted to just make that just a little bit better. Um, so that was the main thing I wanted to do on my build. But of course, make it the way that you want. But I definitely recommend Adrenaline War Rush 1 and 2, and really you want Aerobatics Expert because why not? Extra maneuverability is great on this plane. So that's that with the skills, and in terms of equipment, we get one cockpit module, two airframe, and two engine, which, again, I kind of don't like, to be fair. I would have definitely preferred to have dropped one of these airframe modules or maybe one of the engine modules because the engine is really not that great. It's like, yeah, it's an engine, but it's good, but it's not great. It's just kind of average. And so having two engine slots kind of sucks with this plane, especially when the main feature of this plane is the guns. I would have preferred to have at least one slot in guns because that is the main focus of this plane is the guns, in my opinion. Having those 423 millimeters, that's kind of unique in terms of firepower at this tier for Soviet aircraft. There's no other Soviet aircraft in the game at this tier that wields 423 millimeter guns. So yeah, that kind of sucks, but it is what it is, right? So I ended up going with obviously the increased accuracy because I want these guns to do better. Substats, I did fire, crit damage, and accuracy when firing at moving targets because again, these guns are kind of trolly, so having that increased accuracy when firing at moving targets is a great idea in my opinion. I also went with, you get two airframe ones. You really don't want HP. The only time I ever do HP is if it's a bomber or a ground attack, and maybe in special cases like maybe the British heavy fighters, I might do HP on those as well. But for fighters, you really don't want that. So because of that, you really only have two options. You could go for speed, but again, the speed isn't the defining feature of the aircraft, so it's not something that I recommend you go for. So instead I went with maneuverability, so increase the maneuverability at the cost of HP. This thing doesn't have much HP to begin with, so I don't see how that's really going to affect it that much. You might lose maybe 20 hit points or something, whoop-de-doo, right? So I don't really care about that. And wings resistance to crit damage. Again, you're so maneuverable that you should be able to dodge a lot of the fire anyway, so it shouldn't matter that much. And of course, I just increased the resistance to damage, so it kind of offset the negatives of that other piece of equipment. So now I'm not going to have to worry about my wings or stuff getting damaged as much. I could have alternatively done aircraft speed, but that would have affected my maneuverability, and I didn't want to really affect my maneuverability if I could help it. I wanted to increase maneuverability as much as I could. But again, if that's something that you want to sacrifice some maneuverability to get airspeed, so you're kind of like not perfect at any one given thing, but really good at both, then you could do that and make this kind of the jack of all trades. That's totally reasonable, but it's your preference, I guess, at that point. I preferred to have the increased resistance, I guess, to damage. Because it does seem like this thing takes a little bit of damage for some reason. I don't know why. But it does take a little bit more increased damage than other planes, I guess. It's a little bit more fragile, I guess. And for the engine slot, again, obviously I'm going to take maneuverability. I want to increase that maneuverability because I think the maneuverability is one of those things that you could really make seriously strong. With the maneuverability stat that I have right now, there's very few planes that can outturn you, unless it's like a human plane, a Yak 19 or a Q162, and they have it designed and built for maneuverability. I guess in that case, you could potentially lose to a dogfight, but for all intents and purposes, that's going to happen very infrequently. So, yeah, I'm going to increase my maneuverability as much as I possibly can. So, that's what I went with, and actually, I don't have it calibrated. Why do I not have this thing calibrated? Okay then. I thought I had calibrated it, but I guess I forgot to calibrate this. So I guess on my own time, I'm going to calibrate it. Maybe I ran out of parts at the time. I don't know. It's possible. But anyway, I'll have to calibrate that, make it nice and good. The alternative or the substats, I don't really see a big difference with the substats in this piece, just because they all kind of affect maneuverability. So again, just choose the ones that you want. Yeah. And the other one, just increase the engine cooldown rate. It's a fighter. I want to be using my boost as much as possible, so why not? And I guess I could have done it reduces or increases the engine's resistance to damage piece, but nah, not rad. I'd rather not. I'd instead want to just increase the boost, right? If I'm gonna get 2 engine slots, I want to increase the maneuverability and increase the speed. Because why not, right? So maneuverability is a given. This plane is great for maneuverability. So of course I'm going to try to increase the maneuverability of the aircraft. And then speed, I mean, the speed isn't terrible, so why not just try to improve it just a little bit more? So that's kind of what I did. And boost availability is decreased, but, which kind of sucks. You don't have much boost to begin with, but if you're given 6 seconds of boost and you drop it down to 5 seconds, not a big deal in my opinion, especially when the way that I like to play the plane, or really any of my fighters, I always carry one of these engine cooling modules or consumables, because this will allow me to get 10 seconds of free boost. So if I increased my boost efficiency, then I don't care if I lost some of my standard boost, because I'm guaranteed at least 10 seconds of boost when I use this consumable. And so that improving my efficiency of my boost will give me more effect, will increase the effectiveness and the utility of my boost. I do like my boost quite a bit. It's kind of one of those things that I kind of just have to have, right? Again, we have a first aid kit, and you can choose the other ones that you want. Normally, I don't have 2 engine consumable slots, but I don't really care about if my engine gets destroyed, because the main feature, again, of this aircraft is the maneuverability. So losing your engine kind of in a way sometimes improves your maneuverability, because you're going at a slower speed so you can make tighter turns. So I don't really care if I lose my engine most of the time, and I don't really lose my engine that often. Instead, I'd rather just have the engine cooling. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing with that. And without further ado, I guess the last closing point I'm going to make is, I said at the beginning of the video that this plane is a Tier 9 Premium, and that's exactly what this thing is. So it gets increased crew experience, it also gets increased credits, which is amazing, because just like any of your premium aircraft, you can place any of your Soviet pilots into this plane without any penalty whatsoever. You do not have to retrain your pilot at all. So this plane is a great crew trainer, and yeah, so I do like this plane quite a bit. Uh, I don't. My Soviet pilots are not as good as my other ones, so it's a great way to increase my skill of my pilots. So final mention. This was the only other. This is the second Tier 9 premium in the game. The only other Tier 9 premium aircraft that gets premium credits and premium experience is the Goblin. And I've made two videos on the Goblin before, so I think you guys know very, very well how I feel about the Goblin. So really, at the end of the day, I think the only comparison that really matters at the end of the day is against the Goblin. I've heard many people say that they don't really care for the Antonov, that's not very special, that the Masha is kind of just which is fair. I think it is a very good plane, I guess, but it doesn't really add anything new to the game. But I don't think that's a bad thing, right? So the Goblin was just super unique, and of course, as you guys know, the biggest complaint I had with it was the firepower. The firepower was absolutely terrible, and it took you forever to do any meaningful damage to anything. Um, which is the number one reason why I did not like the Goblin, right? So comparatively to the Goblin, this thing is amazing, right? So if we compare it just for a quick second, because this is the real comparison that really, it's the only comparison that matters. And in the firepower department, yes, as we were talking about, it is the complete opposite of the Goblin. The Antonov M has some of the best firepower of any fighter at Tier 9, with some of the most, at least, reliable guns, right? I mean, there's other planes that have maybe increased DPM or DPS, and there's also other planes that have just bigger, harder hitting guns, right? But at the end of the day, the guns on the Antonov are very good, as much as they can be kind of janky at times. But and of course, survivability is also better than the Goblin. Something else that the Goblin was awful at. Airspeed wise, it is less than the Goblin. The Goblin is definitely, like, that's one of the main features of the aircraft is its airspeed. So of course this plane does not have that crazy airspeed, but it does have better maneuverability than the Goblin. And if anyone out there has played the Goblin, you know that the maneuverability of this plane is very, very good to begin with. You're almost never having to have problems with outturning your enemies. But the Antonov has better maneuverability. So yeah, um, it's very good maneuverability, which is why I kind of focused on it. I mean, the Goblin, if you look at it, the main three things that the Goblin has going for it is airspeed, maneuverability, and altitude. So it is a parasite fighter. It can basically get on the tail of anyone it possibly wants, but it just takes forever to kill it, right? And it's super fragile. So anything that shoots at the Goblin will kill it very quickly. The Antonov doesn't have that downside, and quite frankly, I don't like this type of play style where it puts all of its eggs into uh, one-on-one engagements. Like, most of the engagements in this game are not one-on-one engagements, and you want to be shooting down aircraft very quickly, which is why the Goblin kind of sucks. The Goblin's great if you're just having one-on-one combat. Really, there's nothing that can stop the Goblin. The Goblin is that super annoying, pesty plane, but the Antonov doesn't have that downside, and it's just overall a better plane in my opinion. So yes, the only comparison that matters is it better than the Goblin? And the answer to that is a resounding 100% yes. But without further ado, that was quite enough chit chat. Let us go over to the gameplay. Alright, and welcome to the gameplay. So once I got this thing specialized, I wanted to go out and try to get a 20k game. And guess what? The first battle I did was a 20k game. So I don't know if there's something there, but I don't know, kind of feels like fate, if you ask me. And I'm pretty sure the second battle I played was also a 20k game. So This plane definitely performs. I don't know if it's just it fits my play style or not, but I love maneuverable planes with nasty guns, and in that department, this thing absolutely delivers. And I really don't have any problems with its airspeed at all. Its altitude performance is not terrible compared to other Soviet fighters, which is just something that kind of holds a lot of the other Soviet fighters back, in my opinion. This plane does not have that problem whatsoever. So it just feels pretty good to play. I mean, the guns can be weird. I mean, here I should be hitting the fighter pretty easily, right? But I'm not. Kind of weird. I know that my computer kind of sucks, and so that could always attribute to it a little bit as well. But what does it matter? At the end of the day, we did take it out very quickly. These air defense are very easy to take out. I guess these guns, they do really hit light fighters very, very hard. But for some reason, they don't hit light fighters very easily. It does a lot better against heavy fighters or larger targets. But again, it doesn't do super great against bombers or ground attack planes because once the guns are overheated, it kind of takes a while for the guns to cool down. So surprisingly, it does kind of sometimes take a little while to take down GAs and bombers. I'm going head on with a J7, which, stupid, I know, but at the same time, I took it out. I mean, yeah, he took me out too, but I mean, there's very few fighters that I'm like, yeah, let's go head on with a J7. That nothing bad will happen there. It was kind of stupid, but at the same time, like, why not, right? I guess in a lot of ways, this plane does feel like a J7, doesn't it? It has 4 guns. It's not as powerful of guns as the J7, but at the same time, it's very good guns. And it has better altitude. It has a better engine. It doesn't have any bombs, but I guess this plane does compare similarly to a J7 in that regard. It's one of these planes that just has everything, really. It's got kind of everything going for it. And really the only downside, truly, to this aircraft is the guns can be either hit or miss. Sometimes the guns will do very well. Other times the guns will be very irritating. But regardless, I mean, they just hit so hard. The times that it doesn't work or is annoying, like, doesn't really draw back from the times where it is just ridiculous, right? You don't have that true consistency like you do on 20mm guns or the machine guns, the 50 cal machine guns, right? But at the same time, you do have very good damage output. I would argue that the J7's guns are more reliable than these guns, which is kind of surprising in some ways, I guess. I don't really understand it either, because planes like the Yak-19 or the MiG, I never really had a problem with the accuracy of the guns, but for whatever reason, maybe it is just the fact that the guns are like very low on the nose, 2 of the guns anyway, they're not all like right in the dead center of the nose. Maybe for some reason that has something to do with it. Oh, and we're going head on with the J7 again. And we won. We won against a J7, albeit with 12 hit points, but we did come out ahead. So I don't know if there's much of a better way than that to kind of show off the firepower of this aircraft, right? So, and of course, sectors in this game, we're ahead because we own the center. That's pretty much how this battle always goes. If whoever controls the center wins the game. So from that perspective, I'm just gonna keep taking the center, and they can't do anything about it, right? So sure, center's mine, and of course that poor Mustang. He knows that the center is important, so he's going for the center, but it doesn't matter much because I have the center. So he's down 3 times. Here comes the J7 yet again, and this time I did dodge him because I'd rather not go head on with that thing too many times. I'm gonna die. The Mustang finally had enough of me, which fair, albeit that's fair. So yeah, we're at 12,000. Not too shabby. We've gotten shot down a couple times, but we've shot down so many aircraft. And for some reason, they're about to take that center. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to try to take that center back because the center is the only thing that truly matters to me. I mean, the points kind of mattered too because I was going for that 20,000 game. So if I really want to get like a good 20k game, I wouldn't mind if they took the center at least for a little while. It just makes it harder to attack it. But do notice the guns. If I can't quite kill a target and my guns have overheated, it does get a little bit awkward because you have to kind of stop firing for an uncomfortable amount of time in order for the guns to cool down. Which is another thing that seems kind of weird about this plane because if you've played the Yak 19 or the MiG 9, even though they have the same guns, they seem to cool down faster. So I don't really know what's weird about this plane, but yeah, the guns are a little bit janky. But at the end of the day, I would take these guns any day over the Goblin. So yeah, they're a little jank, but whatever, it's fine. They still hit very hard. And if you put a lot into the accuracy of your guns, then you can kind of just deal with it, you know. And look at the damage output from these guns is very impressive. I don't think there's anyone out there that can deny that the power from these guns is very high. Yeah, that's pretty much this plane in a nutshell. Good maneuverability. It's got good airspeed, not amazing airspeed. It's got good altitude performance, not amazing altitude performance. It's got great guns. It's got pretty average survivability. And so what you get as an overall package is just, there's really no downsides to this aircraft, right? It doesn't really have any weaknesses whatsoever, other than the guns being a little bit trolly sometimes and having kind of a longer cooldown rate than other aircraft. But, I mean, you get pretty much everything else, so you kind of just deal with it, right? Because why not? We took out the Mustang because it is squall line, so that guy will not be coming after us anymore. And I kind of want to take this guy out because he will destroy me very quickly if I don't, but also I destroy him very quickly. This plane is pretty comparable to the J7, but you don't have the multi-roll garbage engines because I don't know why, but multi-rolls always have ridiculously useless engines. So you don't have that downside. You're classified as a fighter, so you have fighter levels of engines, right? Oh, and well, I thought I took out the Mustang, but I guess there was two Mustangs. That's why. That's why there was so many Mustangs. I was like constantly shooting down Mustangs, and I guess that explains why, right? So he took us out. Congrats to him. Doesn't really matter. We win anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much this plane in a nutshell. I will probably show the post-battle results if I'm able to find a screenshot of them. I don't know if I took a screenshot back then or not. But 22,650 personal points, not a bad result at all. Oh, wait, I think we're going to show the results in the video itself. Okay, so we'll go back to the hangar and we'll look at them there. But overall, yeah, this plane just does work. It's very hard to not have a very consistent score in this aircraft. It just has and just is able to do what you need it to do, right? It's just that plane that just does what you want it to do. So, very good aircraft. I have no idea when it's going to come back next, but if you're able to get your hands on it, I highly recommend doing it. It's not a bad aircraft at all. So, yeah. There we go. 450,000 credits. My gosh. I think there might have been some sort of bonus from the Christmas event. So I think it was increasing my credit gain a little bit. But also I might have had a booster going. I don't think there was a booster. If you look in the upper right or upper left hand corner, yeah, it was just premium account. So I didn't have any bonuses from the Christmas event at this time, and I did not have any bonuses with the personal booster. If I did, I would have had even more credit gain. So just goes to show you this thing absolutely makes money. Way more money than, yeah, no boosters. Okay. I know I turned it on at some point to see how much I could really make, and it's very good. If you guys are longtime subscribers to this channel or players of this game, you'll know that I posted videos on the Dornier 335 back when it came out, and that I was getting matches where I made over 1,000,000 credits in one battle. So they must have done something to alter the credits because this is a tier 9 premium and it's not getting that kind of credits. So I'm not really sure why, I guess, but it is what it is, right? So it still makes crazy amounts of credits. It's still a very fun aircraft. If it ever comes back and you're willing to spend the money to get it, uh, I would. It's not a bad aircraft. It's pretty fun. With that being said, yeah, that's pretty much half of as much credits as I made back in the day, huh? Um, I don't have any credit boosters going on at the time, but I did have premium account, so I guess they must have nerfed the credit gain, but it doesn't really matter at this point, really. When you're still making 500,000 credits in one battle, you really can't complain now, can you? So yeah, just an overall fun aircraft, and I look forward to doing the Spitfire event if I'm able to. College does take up a lot of time, so I'll do it if I'm able to, and if college does not get in the way too much. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I know it's been a long, long time since I posted a video, and I do apologize for that. Um, but I'll try to do these marathons and get a video out, at least for the aircraft that they release as premiums. So, with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.